welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon. I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and we'd like to thank Inon or Ionon, depending on which side of the Atlantic you're based, for sponsoring this episode. Inon do a huge range of strobes, water contact optics, and other accessories. I had some great housings too, I should mention that. Please go and check them out at inon.jp. That's inon.jp, obviously .jp for Japan. I'm joined today by our Russian correspondent, Alexeyevich Mustanovich. Do svidaniya. No, that's goodbye, isn't it?
Okay.
Sorry to our Russian.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair response to your.
Sorry to our Russian viewers for my terrible Russian. We thought we'd discuss seriously again. We thought we'd discuss our the results of the Underwater Photographer of the Year competition.
Oh yeah.
The obviously the first thing to ask you, Alex, is I gather there was a change in the judging lineup this year.
Yes, which is UPY. You know, we take the judging very seriously, and it's judged in a very similar way every year. In that we have a very small judging panel. Which puts a lot of responsibility on every single judge. But what it allows us to do is it allows us to get all those judges in one room. And it means that from the very start of the competition all the way through, all three judges see every picture and make every single decision in the competition. So there's no need to pre-cull the entries or anything like that before the main judges see them. And which, you know, I think is a really important part of it. And then the fact that because we're there all together all the way through, there's no decision that you as a judge don't have a say on. You may not always get your way, but you've always got that ability to question the other judges. And, you know, obviously 3 means that it's easy to find, you know, a majority with those numbers. So the judging panel of UPY, since we sort of relaunched it 7-8 years ago, has been Martin Edge, Peter Rowlands and myself. But Martin decided after last year's competition that he wanted to retire from judging the competition. So we had to find a replacement. And I have to say, replacing Martin Edge is not an easy thing to do in any way in underwater photography. So we spent, you know, a good amount of time thinking about it and actually involved Martin completely in that process. And what we wanted was someone that really brought, you know, it wasn't a case of we're going, well, you know, at the moment we're 3 English men. Therefore, we should, you know, try to diversify our panel as much as possible by immediately choosing someone of this background or this gender or anything like that. We actually just wanted to have someone that would do the best job for the entries, because ultimately UPY is, you know, is the only people who care about the judges are the entrants, really. The wider world who sees the results just want the best underwater photos. So that was always our goal. And we wanted to find someone, and we found Tobias Friedrich to be the judge, who, first of all, had that breadth of knowledge of underwater photography. UPY isn't just a nature photography competition. It's not just a rec competition. It's not just a classic diving competition. There's pictures from all around the world in all sorts of places that no one could have dived. And so you need someone with that really broad experience to not just be excited about what they haven't seen, but instead to really, you know, understand what's been put into those pictures. And is that a really great example of that genre of underwater photography? And we felt Tobias really brought that to the mix. He's also, although he's a very successful, you know, pro photographer, he also knows his stuff teaching wise. He knows his stuff, you know, in wide angle, macro, tropical, polar, you know, all those things. But he's also, you know, a good guy. He's not one of these raving egomaniacs that inhabit the underwater photography world. and that's actually really important, because when you have 3 judges, you need to be able to compromise. You can't have your own way all the time. You have as a UPY judge, you have a lot of ability to shape the collection. But at the same time, you need to know when you're not going to be able to win your picture that, you know, you love. And you need someone who's not a raving egomaniac for that. And I think the reason Peter Martin and I worked so well together was that we all had very different opinions, but we all respected each other's opinions, and we would all change our minds when we understood the arguments that someone else was making.
I
We
could
felt
point out
Tobias fits into that very well as well.
that the fact that there were three raving egomaniacs in the same room meant that you had to compromise.
Yeah, yeah, and absolutely. But I think it's
I'm teasing.
I think the problem you have with photographers is that
Yeah,
to be a successful photographer, you need a clear vision. You're
yeah,
a one man or one woman team, and you
yeah,
go out there and you do things your way. And if you
yeah,
don't do things your way, no one's interested in your work. So you get so used to that affirmation of your decisions always being the right way to do things
yeah,
that actually, when you get into a judging room and someone goes, "Well, actually, your opinion is now not the driving force for this decision," it's very
oh,
hard for a lot of photographers to take because
yeah,
they're used to their opinion being everything that drives their whole career.
yeah,
And so that's why it can be, it's quite hard. So, and particularly because we're all in one room and it's
yeah,
not just done by scoring,
yeah,
you can have raving egomaniacs in the scoring because they can score the pictures their way and then they get averaged out.
yeah,
But in a judging
yeah,
process that's based around reaching a consensus, you
yeah,
need to have good guys. So very happy with Tobias. Very sad though to lose Martin,
yeah,
who obviously needs no introduction to an underwater photography audience. And it was always a pleasure to judge with him. Very educational as well. Just learning how he appreciated images, the things that for him could make or break an image, and just his ability to find also really original images. Although today we're just going to talk about the category winners in
yeah,
UPY. Ever since sort of I started judging with Martin, I've taken real care over the whole collection of UPY winners and to showcase images that I feel the underwater photography community really needs to see. So
yeah,
we always try and include, some really groundbreaking original images
yeah.
in that. And Martin was a great one at wheedling out those images and finding really special shots and different shots for the
Yeah.
collection. So we'll do our best to keep that going in the future.
I think one of the things that singles out any judging panel is the breadth of experience, and ultimately, for want of a better word, it's years in the game. And obviously, having people like yourself and Peter and Martin in meant that there's a lot of years there. And Tobias is similar. He's been shooting for a long time, and it's great to see. It's great to see new blood come in, but with that similar kind of background of been there, done that sort of type thing. I think it's very important.
And I do think the low number of judges really puts, it means that every judge knows that, they're going to have a massive say over the collection. So there's no room for slacking, but you also accept when you don't get your way because you're going to get plenty of times when 30% of the time you should be getting your way,
Yeah,
even if you all completely disagree on everything. And so our top tens in each category, the winners are pictures that we all agree on.
yeah,
But within the top 10, there'll be pictures that one of the judges absolutely loves and the other two don't really care for a lot.
yeah,
And the code to work that out is when you read the UPY yearbook in particular and you see the judges' comments.
yeah,
We comment on the pictures that we love. We choose which pictures to comment on. So
yeah.
if there's a picture in there when you go, "Oh, why is that one in there?" Look which judge is commenting on it, and you'll have a good idea of who pushed it forward. But I'd always rather have a set of winners that somebody loved rather than everyone scored 8 out of 10.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I'm very happy with that process.
That's the
Anyway,
downside of
let's
averages,
look at
isn't
the
it?
pictures.
Yeah. So obviously the winning image is Rafael Fernandez. Amazing picture of some feeding whale sharks
Mm,
from the Maldives, I believe.
yeah,
There's a sequence of pictures of images that he took of this event, and obviously they're feeding on plankton, presumably, or we assume they're feeding on plankton attracted into the light by the boat's lights or whatever
it's
the
a bit
lights
like a
are.
gigantic blackwater dive.
Yeah, giant blackwater dive with whale sharks.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think from a creative point of view, it obviously is very dark, and managing to use the light so selectively, both the ambient light produced by the boats and the light that he used, the continuous light, I believe, to light the sharks in the foreground, was a great creative decision, and it's beautifully done creatively. So it's a combination of things, isn't it? It's an amazing moment, combined with a technically very beautifully shot image. So
Yeah,
yeah,
in very challenging, photographic conditions, not
yeah,
challenging ocean conditions, but challenging photographic conditions. And just a remarkable scene with so many. It just surprisingly, because it's such a dark image, it's been printed now in lots of newspapers and things, and it's printed really well. So I really look forward to seeing the big prints when we exhibit them at the dive show coming up in the UK.
It's an amazing image.
No, I completely agree. I think it is. Right, should we rattle through these, because there's quite a lot to look through with all 13 categories.
So with macro, the winner was Javier Murcia with a picture of is it Tokozumi shrimp?
No, I think it's a chameleon shrimp. It's the same one we have in the UK, I think, which I think extends down into the Mediterranean, and on a pipe fish. I think the first thing I'd say is that normally the macro category is one of the most entered at UPY, and this year it probably had the smallest entry number we've had for a long time. Gosh. And I think that is a real reflection of the fact that those classic macro destinations and a lot of the countries that like to dive in those areas, there's been a lot of travel restrictions both on Southeast Asian destinations, but also generally on Asian countries have had a lot less travel freedom than we've had in Europe, and far less than people in North America have had. And I think that has restricted the number of macro pictures we got this year. This picture, however, I think, would have been a top dog in many years to capture this amazing behavior. As a competition judge, you're always nervous around unusual associations between animals. But when you have two mobile animals that clearly can't be coerced into position, you can be much more relaxed about those things. It was nice to see a number of Spanish photographers doing so well this year. Spain has always been a real hotbed of underwater photography. But UPY, generally, we've never had that many really big Spanish, winners. We have had Spanish winners in the past, but this year it seemed to be a real dominance by Spanish photographers. So that was really great to see.
I guess they're lucky. They have got some amazing diving very close to home, which this is an example of that, I would guess.
Yeah.
Technically, so it's obviously the subject of the image. It's an amazing moment. Technically, I would like to see it. I mean, I like blue backgrounds typically, but I would like to see this with a more contrast in the background. To me, I think that the blue is pleasing, but it's not a wonderful blue, and I think it loses the subject. I think if we could have a bit more contrast or a bit more separation possibly between the background and the subject, would be an interesting thing to have a look at. It doesn't jump out the page. I have to look and see what's going on, and I think as a passing audience, some people would miss the what a clever picture it is.
Absolutely, I think it is for a lot of people, it's a delayed reaction picture. I think initially, some people look at it and they don't, I think for me, I like the lighting and the color palette of it work very well. It's a very subtle image. It's a very naturalistic image, which I think suits this shot because it's a picture that's all about behavior. And I think you need those blades of seagrass in the background to understand the foreground subjects, which are animals that are living secretively in this environment. And in fact, there's this unusual association of this shrimp that has ended up on the pipefish. And normally that shrimp wouldn't live on the pipefish, it would live on those blades of grass. So I feel those are important for the narrative.
It is called mimicry, so I guess there's a lesson there.
Yeah, and I think that that association is really unusual. I agree, though, that it's quite a break from the mold of the typical kind of full color black background macro category winner. And I think if you look at the macro category overall, there is plenty of those type of images, and I think this perhaps stood out amongst those other finalists because it had taken macro in such a different direction and caught such a special moment. On to Rex. So Alex Dawson dominated, it's fair to say, the rec category this year with a lot of images. This was quite different from some of the others, actually. I think quite a lot of the others had a very similar style, and it was kind of quite clear in the judging that we almost needed to separate them out a little bit in the top 10 because there were so many strong ones. We couldn't just clump them all together. This one definitely had a different feel, and we weren't aware in the judging that it was kind of part of the same series. But it's got that classic rec feel.
Mm.
of a big deep wreck. I think the lighting, the use of the diver is very strong, and I really like the dive boat above. It just gives a depth and perspective that I think this picture really needed. I think without that, it would have just felt a bit too two-dimensional, and I think the boat
Yeah.
at the top just completed the image very nicely.
It definitely gives it the scale, doesn't it? It gives not a scale maybe, but a more. It sets where this is a wreck under the water. There's no doubt about what's going on here. It's dark. It's obviously got a history. The wheel is a very obvious, recognisable object,
Yeah.
and a clever one to use to get the divers to light up because it has that immediate kind of everyone knows what ship's wheel looks like. So
Yeah, and it captures that sort of mind's eye view of a
mm,
classic ancient shipwreck.
yeah, no, it's a beautifully shot again.
Mm.
I mean, I would imagine probably difficult shot technically, and well done. Yeah, yeah.
Although Alex Dawson does seem to knock those type of shots out quite regularly, so difficult for everyone else, but
Well,
easy for him.
he's got the winning formula.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Should we roll
Yeah.
into behaviour category?
Indeed. Yeah.
And the winner of this category also won, which is Pekaturi, also won the My Backyard Award, which is just a kind of an add-on award we have in the competition to highlight images that are taken close to home. And I think it's just important that in a competition that obviously has images from all around the world to remind people that underwater photography isn't just about who can afford the most expensive trip and go to the most amazing destination. And so we like to highlight all the images that were taken close to home during during the year, and obviously everyone's home is in different places.
Yep.
This picture, it's quite common we get a lot of frog and toad images in the competition, and they do tend to do very well in behavior categories just because there's such demonstrable behavior in them.
Yep.
But this one obviously has a lot of comedy in there too, with the female frog in the middle, clearly um, under attack, shall we say, from both sides, with a couple of amorous suitors. But I think they might be too late, judging by all the eggs in the background. But just a fun shot, clearly taken in a local pond. And I think very very powerful, very very memorable image, and just very funny as well.
Yeah, it has a great comedy value.
Mm.
It's which I think for my backyard is nice. It highlights that you can have fun in your own backyard. They certainly seem to be.
I think one thing we do struggle with the my backyard category, and we talk about this a lot as judges, is not to let our own bias of what a backyard picture should be limit things. Because we talk about that. What happens if you are a dive guide who lives on a liveaboard? Where's your backyard? And so we do try and make it as all encompassing as possible. And I know we've had two kind of freshwater pictures in the 2 years we've had this competition, but we are very broad in the understanding of it, and we're very aware that people's backyards are very different around the world. But we do want pictures that have that close to home feeling to encourage photographers to remember that. So moving on to the portrait category.
Yeah.
And I think this year we've actually got two category winners that are swimming pool shots, and this is the first of them. And we've always been very happy in UPY to award swimming pool images in a number of categories, or underwater studio type pictures. And I think that's really because we want to remind people that what underwater photography can be. Underwater photography isn't just photographing whale sharks in the Maldives. It's all aspects of underwater photography are very welcome in UPY, and we're always very happy to promote this type of image as long as we feel it's outstanding in the genre. And I think Thomas Heckman's picture here is a very outstanding and original image as a model shot. It's created a graphically very powerful image with really striking color, but also detail and creatively very beautifully produced to produce this kind of red cross against the black background with the face of the model in there, the body of the model kind of helping to form the cross with the surface of the water. Actually relatively simple elements that have come together to produce a really original and powerful image. So I think it's a very classy bit of work.
It's very graphic, isn't it? When you scroll through a series of images, it immediately, and I think that's, as you say, partly it's the red and the black, but it's graphically very, very strong.
Yeah, and I think in a year when travel was not so easy, it's not surprising that we have, studio and swimming pool shots rising to the top this year.
Yeah, yeah.
And the same is true of this photo. Very, again, a pretty simple shot. I presume taken in a swimming pool with, of a, of a young girl, which won the black and white category, and that's Kerry Burrows' picture. And just, one of those pictures, very, very difficult to ignore, but a very, very powerful black and white picture. So not a classic, but just stood out so strongly. And I think, just this dreamlike feeling created by the bubbles and the swirling hair really sort of drew us into this portrait.
I think it's a very strong portrait, actually. To me, the fact that the two on the Wetpixel report are together. To me, it definitely would fall into the. I mean, it is black and white, so it falls into both categories. But I think it's a very strong portrait. I think the intensity of the model's eyes is it's very engaging, and I think the black and white really helps that. It removes the distraction of the color. So yeah.
Okay, on to compact category.
Yeah.
And the winner of this is been a previous winner of this category several times. It's Enrico Somogyi with this picture of a toad just at the surface, half in, half out the water. I think a lot of drama in this picture. There's a lot of story in you get the background, you get the season from that sky, from the bare leaves of the trees, and then you get this almost, it kind of feels a bit like the perspective, because it's shot with a wide lens very close. It almost feels like a Godzilla type toad kind of crawling its way across.
Yeah.
Which is kind of makes for a very dramatic. But I think it's the detail of this shot. I'm sure that the photographer took lots and lots, but just how that hand, which dominates the composition, wraps around the face and the eye, you still get the eye contact. I think it's all those aspects I think are very, very strong.
Actually, it's actually an image that probably really lends itself to a compact camera. Getting a big-bodied camera into that position to shoot that image is probably not going to work. So it probably is the type of image that's actually, ironically, easier to get with a compact than it would be with a big camera.
I think that's a very fair point.
And I think that makes it a very fitting winner. I mean, I think that we should, when we're talking about a particular camera system as a category, you want to look for images that really suit that camera system. I think it's a good example of it.
Yeah. And I think UPY is aimed at finding the very best underwater photos around the world, and it doesn't pander too much to these these lesser camera categories. I know a lot of competitions have endless subdivisions to attract more and more entries. We have one compact category, and we generally use that category to showcase what can be done with compact cameras. Really, and that's kind of our goal for running that category. And it doesn't have as big prizes as other categories. It has good prizes, but it's not. You don't get entered in the main prize pool from that category. You just get fixed prizes within it. One of my favorite categories in UPY is up and coming. And this is a category that's open to newer photographers and photographers who are yet to sort of get well known. But that doesn't mean that the standard is really any lower. It's normally one of the highest standard categories. And it's a category where we as judges definitely look to award images that we feel represent someone who's bringing a really fresh vision to underwater photography. So we'll forgive a few technical imperfections if someone has really got a fresh viewpoint, a fresh eye. And Kiko Abadal from Spain produced this image. And, I just think it's a, very simple shot. In terms of the subject matter, he's gone in snorkeling off a beach with a model at sunset with the intention of creating an interesting image, and then particularly in how it's presented, the whole idea of the image has created a dreamlike frame, pretty much straight from the camera. And I think that's exactly for me what we look for in this category. Is not someone who's gone out, they may be new, but they've bought an expensive camera, gone on all the big trips, and got a great photo of a humpback whale or whatever it is. but actually has gone out there with relatively simple opportunity and created something that's very strong as an image and very fresh. So I think this is an excellent winner of this category.
It's very conceptual, isn't it?
Mm.
You know, it's one of those images that you have to look at to really figure out what's going on.
Mm.
And once you do, you know, the as you say, the going in the water, and actually, I don't know whether he or she went into the water with this image in mind, but you know, the product is fantastic. Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah,
Exciting.
I think probably quite a lot of the idea came after the event, but you know,
Yeah,
they had the
yeah,
idea to get in there to experiment to play around with things. Right. We'll just finish off, I think, with the British Waters categories,
yeah.
because UPY is in the UK. We always, you know, like to highlight UK stuff, and there aren't really competitions that really celebrate the best of British. I know the overseas viewers don't always of the competition don't always pay as much attention to these, but there are always some very strong images in these categories, so they're well worth looking
Indeed.
at.
Yeah.
And we'll go through these relatively quickly. The winners of British Waters Wide Angle was Henley Spears with this picture, Gannet Storm. We've had Gannets winning this category before. They're obviously a very charismatic UK subject. We only have so much biodiversity, so we do tend to go around the same subjects again and again. But I think this was a really fresh take on them, using the long
Quite good.
exposure, but also getting so much personality from the subject.
I think it's one of my favourite images of the competition. Actually, I have to say.
Mm.
I think it's a fresh look. I think it's very fresh. I think it's technically well executed. And you know, it's a different take on a Gannet image, which at the end of the day is something that people aren't doing. So
Mm.
unfortunately now he's ruined that idea, so it won't be fresh anymore. But when it was shot, yeah, no, I think it's a lovely picture. It was one of my favourites. Yeah.
And then British Waters Macro was won by Dan Bolt with this photo of a pair of Yarrow's Blennies. These are not a particularly cooperative subject in the UK, and also one that isn't seen as commonly. And so to get two of them together is a really strong achievement. And obviously there's a lot of personality from both individuals in this picture. So a very nice nice photo, and actually something that to us is actually quite a fresh and original UK diving shot as well. I've not seen a photo of a pair of these before together.
Dan dives a lot, and I think that probably explains this picture. You know, it's kind of, you know, this is very much a time in water picture. It's not a picture you're going to get on your first visit. It's, you know, it's one
Yeah,
you do by going to the same place over and over again. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Our next category is called British Waters Living Together, and this is a category specifically about celebrating man's relationship with the marine environment in the UK. And the winner of that was Lewis Jeffries with this photo here of a paddleboarder and a jellyfish taken. Well, I can see it's taken in Falmouth because I recognise the hotels on the waterfront in Falmouth, in Cornwall. But you know, just a classic, you know, nice split level image. I don't remember if the paddleboarder was under his instruction or he was just in snorkeling and they came past. But yeah, very strong image.
Mm.
And then I was going to finish off with our British Waters compact category, finish off the British categories. This is for compact cameras in the UK. And this picture probably taken about 200 yards away from the previous picture, actually. This is taken in Falmouth as well, by Martin Stevens, called Rock Pool Star. Just a split level in the rock pool, but I think we're always happy to encourage in this compact category, particularly that, you know, underwater photography isn't just about scuba diving or free diving, and
Mm.
actually, you know, great underwater photos can be taken without doing either.
Yep.
Just, you know, getting a camera into a river, into a rock pool,
Yep.
can produce really interesting images. And again, like you said earlier, compact cameras are often very well suited to this because of their small size.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and there's two more images I wanted to highlight quickly before we finish up. The first is our Save Our Seas Foundation Marine Conservation Photographer of the Year. And this year that was won by Thine Nguyen Ngoc from Vietnam. And I'm sorry for butchering his name, as much as these nets are fishing the ocean. And not, you know, not a, and I think just a very graphic image of fishing.
Mm.
It talks about an anchovy fishery in Vietnam, and how this fishery has been, you know, overfished, the stocks have reduced, and that's had a massive knock-on effect to the food web.
Yep.
But just the image, just shows how how huge these nets are compared to the boats. And then when you start thinking about how big the people are on the boats,
Yep.
how huge, how much we strain, how just a few people can strain such a huge amount of the ocean so quickly. Nothing illegal going on here, or anything like that in a conservation country, but a reminder of the everyday realities of these things.
It's a scale thing, isn't it?
Mm.
It's emphasizing the scale of this is normal fishing. This is going on every day
Yeah.
in tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of places. Yeah.
And then the final image I was going to mention is our British underwater photographer of the year, which
Yeah.
goes to the strongest image taken by a British photographer in the competition. And this year was won by Matty Smith, who's British, who's from the north of England. If you heard his interviews on the TVs, he was on BBC the other day, but lives in Australia, and he produced this amazing portrait of a great white shark, taken with a homemade rather undersells his engineering skills, but a custom made pole cam system to create this image. And it's an image that he'd long had in his mind, but took him years to actually get the shot the way he wanted it to create a very revealing portrait of the great white shark. And I think just made special by the split level. So a very pleasing image to win that category. And I know this one has been very popular with the press, and it's been all over the place in the last few days.
Yeah, it's a very great, it's a very charismatic image from the subject, isn't it? It's, yeah.
So that's plenty to be going on with. There's far more on the UPY website. If you go to underwaterphotographeroftheyear.com, you can see all the images. You can download the yearbook of the images for free and have a look through them. A lot of photographers really love keeping that yearbook on their laptop or on their phone, as it's a great source of inspiration when you're on a trip and you're like, oh, what can I do today? And then you have a look through it and you just see these great images.
I was going to say exactly that. I was saying, I think it's a must-have. It's a not only is it very beautiful, but it's also a great source for creative ideas, and something that should be referred back to frequently. So, thank you very much, Alex. That's wonderful. And thanks again to In On for sponsoring this episode. We can't make this episode without our sponsor support, so we really appreciate it. Thank you to you all for watching. Please feel free to add any comments about any of the images or the competition itself in the comment section, and drop us a like if you enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you again soon.